someday, like hopefully this upcoming Christmas, I'm supposed to get a record player. So I'm totally gonna buy their album very soon, I hope, because I really liked that song that I heard. It had the word someday in it. There's a lot of people helping us with this Toastmasters meeting today, which has 3 parts. We have prepared speeches. That's when people have worked for a week or 2 in advance to get ready to speak, and they're going to present to us as part of their educational program. Then second, we'll have table topics. That's where we get to speak on impromptu topics picked by one of our members, and anybody can be called on to give a 1 to 2 minute response. Third, we have the evaluations. That's when we have our prepared speakers. Now we'll have evaluations from our evaluators who give them instant feedback that we all can learn from. Now, a number of people are helping us today. So let's introduce them and briefly, in a sentence or 2, tell us anything special about how you're going to perform your role today. First up is our timer, Nick Lahani.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Today, we're going to be keeping time. We're going to be keeping time, and I'm going to be posting the times on the chat and, if called upon, verbally as well. What I would like you to do is to make sure that if you are speaking, pin me on your video and look out for the green light, which happens to be today, this one here. And for the yellow, this one here. And for the red, this one here. If, for example, you go over 30 seconds after the red, we will actually go to a flashing light. So if you don't want me to flash, just finish in time. And finally, if anybody would like an audible warning, please do let me know in advance. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Timer. If the meeting doesn't end by 9 o'clock, the internet will implode and we'll all be sucked into a black hole. So timing is very important. Our R counter tonight is Mike Walsh.
Yeah, Mr. Toastmaster. So my role today will be listening. Now, you'll do much better if you completely captivate me so I can't pay attention to what I'm doing. But if you don't, I'm going to try to count all the ahs and the ums, the sentences that begin with so or you knows, or anything else you might be creative to put in there. In other words, all of those word crutches that we use that maybe we could replace with something else, including just nothing, like a pause. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mr. R counter. I just came back from the future and I told myself not to use any crutch words today. Our grammar cop is Jim Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I am indeed your grammar cop for the evening. I will be listening for egregious uses of the English language, of which I am confident I will not hear any cases. I will also be listening for extraordinary uses of the English language, which I am sure we will be filled with abundance with. I will also be listening for the word of the day, and someday I'll give a report, Mr. Toastmaster.
Cheerio, grammar cop. Our watcher tonight is Elaine Nieberding.
This evening, Mr. Toastmaster, honored guests, and fellow Toastmasters, I'll be watching you closely. Here at Online Presenters, the visual presentation is everything. So when you talk, how are you going to be in the frame? How are you using your hands? How is your lighting? I'll be commenting on those kinds of things at the end of the evening.
Thank you, Madam Watcher. I'm really amazed. You're all so tiny. You're like tiny little people on video screens. You're like the size of my thumb. I don't understand this. Our chat monitor tonight is Tricia Smith.
Hello, yes, I'm the chat monitor. So I will be paying attention to all of the discussions going on in the chat and just making a note of it and kind of summarizing it at the end. I believe that's my role.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chat Monitor. What is chat? Our vote counter today is Joy Knudsen.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I have the pleasure to do some counting today. In the parallel universe where I normally live, we don't do any counting and we don't speak either. We can just like perceive, somehow absorb what's happening in other people's minds. But in this reality, counting is very important. And after every of the three parts, I hope you will send me in private chat your vote for what is the best speech, the best table topic, and the best evaluation. And in the end of the meeting, at some point of time, I will tally all these numbers, and then in the end of the meeting, I will announce who are the winners today. Mr. Table Topics, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Joy. To save time, I will beam you my votes now. Done. Thank you. Congratulations to the winners. It's time for our first segment, the prepared speeches. We have 3 speakers today. All are speaking for 5 to 7 minutes. 5 minutes for the green, 6 minutes for yellow, and 7 minutes for red. Today, our first speaker is Antoinette Trim. She's speaking from Motivational Strategies, Level 4, Building Skills. Motivate Others. The title of her speech is, I Did Not Know That I Could Motivate Others. Let's welcome Antoinette.
Thank you, Toastmaster. Quick. I couldn't believe that I could have been influential to anyone. It started way back in 2009 when I enrolled in a tertiary institution. At the same time, there was a guy named James who also enrolled in his institution. But not long after, a few months after, he dropped out. Anyway, sometime later, we met each other. As we say in Tobago, it's a small place. So sometimes you may have met someone maybe a year ago, and then 2 years after you would have seen them maybe at a grocery store or in a drugstore. So we became good friends again. As with anything else, we formed a relationship and we had our misunderstandings. So at times we would not speak to each other because he may have said something unkind to me and vice versa. Now fast track that to 10 years later. During that time, I completed my associate degree in psychology and as well as did my master's degree in psychology. But he didn't have any, should I say, initials next to his name. However, he liked the field of health and safety. So sometime again, he formed a company, a health and safety company. And he decided that, you know what, Antoinette, I want to employ you as a lecturer in psychology. I was amazed. But little did I know, he secretly enrolled in an institution in Trinidad to do his bachelor's in health and safety. Now, we have been friends. And I'm thinking, well, why would he do that without him informing me? But some weeks after, he decided to tell me. And what he said, you know what, Antoinette? You have been really, really influential in my life. So that is why he decided, you know what? I will obtain his master's in health and safety. Well, he has now formed this company, and he employed me to do lectures on understanding human behavior, whilst he continued to do lectures on health and safety. And we'd go about to different companies like supermarkets, hardware stores to do our lectures. But at the same time, we also critique one another. For example, I would tell him, you have too many fillers, taking it from Toastmasters. And he would tell me, you know what, Antoinette, you need to do some more personal, should I say more personal examples of human behavior. And we will go about critiquing each other and so on. I gave that backdrop to say that you never know who is looking at you. You never know who you can influence. You never know who may be influential to you. And we should really continue striving towards our goal. And you never know as well, people will be looking on and they will be either trying to catch up with you or trying to work alongside you. And I just want to say to all of my Toastmaster friends to keep on keeping on. Keep on striving towards the goal, no matter what. No matter what obstacles you encounter from time to time. As you know, as adults, we encounter obstacles. Sometimes you may be dissatisfied of something, or you may be discouraged of something, or maybe you just, look, I just given up. But as Toastmasters, let us all continue to move towards our developmental goal. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you, Speaker Antoinette. Don't give up, Antoinette. It looks like you may be sinking into fruits and vegetables, but please don't get out. Claw your way out, because we want to have you at the next meeting. Our next speaker is Sil Boizhanova. She's speaking from Presentation Mastery Level 2, Learning Your Style, Understanding Your Communication Style. The title is Understanding Your Style of Communication. It still says that every person has unique communication style, a way in which they interact and exchange information with others. What is your style of communication? Let's welcome Asil.
Are you sad? I asked my daughter. She replied, almost crying. Oh, come here. I spread my arms to hug her. Did I tell you that my daughter is 14? I'm still getting used to her sudden changes in mood. She was always calm and content. And I like her personality very much. I like her ability not to hold grudges. I liked that I easily could make her laugh. But seeing her sad for no reason is still new to me. We lived abroad for a while, for 7.5 years. 3 years ago, when we came back to our home country, Kazakhstan, I got a job offer from a copper company, Kaz Minerals. It was a great opportunity for me to restart my career after a long break. I was so excited. But my daughter's father said to me, it would be good if I stayed home with her, because she was about to start going to school online. Online schools was a new experience for us, because in America and Australia, she went to brick and mortar schools. Now, I am with her all the time. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes we get emotional. But we try to talk about our feelings. For now, it's manageable. Being home, sitting home, staying home, had some big advantages for me. One of them, learning about online Toastmasters clubs. Another platform to meet people from different countries with different accents. Being in leadership roles requires you to be a good communicator, and you have to be aware of different cultures, different attitudes, and even different sense of humor. Fellow Toastmasters and dear guests, what is communication? Communication is the way of listening, responding, making decisions, and solving problems. There are styles of communication: assertive, aggressive, passive-assertive, aggressive, submissive, and manipulative. When we meet someone, how can we identify their communication style? Maybe ask questions, observe reactions, and listen actively. You can ask simple questions. How do you spend your time? What do you like to read? What is your hobby? Watch how people interact with you. Do they engage in small talk? Do they cut to the chase? Do they tell stories? Do they break their issue into small parts? Or do they ask questions? Weigh the number of times when people talks about feelings. In assessing a person's style, observe the role that a person is playing. In a leadership role, for example, it may feel a person has to be assertive. It's their job. But are they assertive by nature or just playing their part? The balance of inquiry and assertion will tell you. There is no simple key will yield the correct answer every time. You simply have to practice observing. Assertive communication is the best effective communication. It is born of high esteem. Assertive communication is the ability to express positive and negative ideas and feelings in an open, honest, and direct ways. In this project, when I did the Discover Your Communication Style, I learned that among these 4 styles, supportive, initiating, and analytical and direct, supportive style fits me most. Well, if I know how to help people, I like being supportive. But I think it's important to learn how to pick the right style for a particular audience, whether it's one person or 1,000, and build flexibility around your preferred style. Being a good communicator, it's not easy, but it's possible. You need to listen more than they speak. Be aware of misunderstanding. Pay attention to non-verbal communication and practice assertive style of communication. Do you agree with me? Mr. Toastmaster, John?
Thank you, Asil. In the future, all of our communication is nonverbal because we just ha ha ha. Joy, you're so funny. Our next speaker is David Carr. From Visionary Communication Level 2, Learning Your Style, the Mentoring Project. His title is Unofficial Mentors. David says our most valuable mentors and Toastmasters often aren't officially designated as our mentors. Let's welcome David to tell us about it.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. You know, this probably is not the speech about Toastmasters mentoring that Toastmasters International wants me to give. But when I think about this topic and what I could say about it that was useful, the thing that jumped to mind was the gap that I see between theory and practice of Toastmasters mentoring. Now, I have to say that this is a project that I come to in a grudging, grumpy sort of attitude. I hate to be one of those people who is always complaining about pathways, and I see valuable elements to the Pathways program. But does anybody else here agree with me that the level 2 projects are kind of annoying? I think they are. I think they're functional speeches that you're supposed to give that serve the interests of Toastmasters International, perhaps, but not necessarily the member who's giving the speech. I'm not sure necessarily the audience either. I found this to be true of all the level 2 speeches, but the mentoring one strikes me as particularly awkward. Now, if you look at the official evaluation guide, it says, the speech should not be a report on the content of the Introduction to Toastmasters Mentoring Project. And yet I find that basically everybody who gives the speech winds up regurgitating some of that material from the official guidelines because they have to define their terms. So briefly, TI at least makes a distinction between a coach and a mentor, where a coach is somebody who helps you over a specific hurdle. Maybe you want your body language to be better, your use of body language and speeches to be better. And so you go to the person who evaluated you on that and you ask them for a little bit more coaching. Mentoring, in contrast, is supposed to be for the long term. It's somebody who is guiding you along and not necessarily telling you what to do, but helping you discover what you want to be doing. Now, these are useful concepts, and they're not just useful in Toastmasters, they're useful in life and business in general. I just, again, find that there's a gap between theory and practice. Now, in reality, I do find that I get useful mentoring from Toastmasters. I probably get the most useful mentoring that I've gotten in my adult life or career. And that's part of why I stick with it. But the theory, well, actually, I don't actually understand what the theory is supposed to be anymore. Because it used to be that in the Competent Leader Manual, one of the things that you needed to check off on the list in order to get that award or that recognition was that you would mentor a new member on their first 3 speeches. And actually, if you go back to the pathways definition, that sounds more like coaching than mentoring because the focus is on the short term. But I guess ideally, it works out so that those two people build a relationship, and that could become a more long-term mentoring relationship. So that's all good. And at my home club, Club Awesome, we do have a formal mentoring program where we try and match new members with somebody who is going to help them through those first speeches, following more or less the CL model. And that's great. But where it tends to break down is fairly quickly. Very often people want to get off to a good start, and we tell them to look around the club and find somebody who ought to be their mentor, but sometimes things get out of sync and they wind up giving their first speeches before they get assigned a mentor. What is common, and I don't know how you avoid it, is that often we assign somebody to be the mentor and that person stops coming. They may drop out of the club or they just not stop showing up. And so ideally you would go back and you would match them up with a new mentor, but sometimes you don't know, they haven't come to the last few meetings, but maybe they'll come back. Well, they don't always come back. As a practical matter, the good mentors that I found in Toastmasters had nothing to do with the formal program. They emerged naturally as we got to know each other. And I think particularly of a period where I became Vice President of Education before I thought I was ready for that. And then we had a leadership crisis of the club. I wound up being bumped up to president, definitely before I was ready for that. And so these were the experienced members who gave me some kind of pat in the back, some kind of word of encouragement to tell me I was doing basically okay. And then particularly if I asked, they would give me some pointers on what I could be doing better. And actually, one of the things that we do get out of the formal educational materials from TI is the role of the protege. So the person who is getting the mentoring or seeking out the mentoring, they have a responsibility too to ask for what would be useful to them. So Mr. Toastmaster, if I could travel back in time, I would tell myself to play a more active role in seeking out mentors. But I'm fortunate that I found them anyway. And when I found them, nobody cared about the academic distinction between a coach and a mentor. And those senior members, they didn't care about getting the stupid CL credit. I was lucky that they cared about me and they were willing to help in any way they could. So my real practical advice is to take whatever value you can get from the formal program, but above all, seek out your natural mentors. Find them, listen to them, and cherish them. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, David. I think you should grow a mustache because you are a true investigative reporter. And maybe if you grow a mustache, you can be like one of those legends of yore, like John Stossel or Gerardo Rivera. Mr. Timer, do we still have time?
We have plenty of time, Mr. Toastmaster. I've put the times in the chat. Antoinette, 5 minutes 14. Asil, 7 minutes and 01. And David, 6 minutes and 55. So everybody qualifies. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Timer. That's a relief. Send your votes to Joy privately. Now it's time for Tiger Topics. And to lead our Tiger Topics today is our own Tiger McCandy. Let's welcome him.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. My first participant is going to be Mr. Jim Barber. Jim, It is 1967. I am a famous PI. You have offered me a fortune. Why have you hired me?
Why haven't I hired you?
Why have you hired me?
Oh, why have I hired you? That's a completely different question, Mr. Topics Master, my fellow Toastmasters. Well, you see, the thing is, if I tell you why I hired you, this is being recorded, so I'm not only telling everybody else here tonight, I'm also telling everybody, all three of them, that are going to be listening to the replay later. And that is very awkward because this is something that I need to keep secret. And that's why I came to you, because I heard that you are the best private eye in the business. And I won't settle for less than the best. I've got to find out who is trying to leak this secret to the world, and I don't want it to get out. But why did I hire you? This is going to astound everybody. They're not going to believe it. So probably I'm safe in revealing it. Because you're going to go, no, there is just no way. I am not enthralled with pathways. I know, but it's true. And I don't want that getting out, because people are going to look down on me. They're going to say I'm not a Toastmasters supporter. And that's not true at all. I just feel that maybe Pathways is less than the program that I would desire it to be. And so I'm one of the people that David Carr said that he did not want to be, somebody that's complaining about Toastmasters all the time. And that is me, and I don't want that to get out. And you're right, there was no Pathways in 1967. That's the second part of my secret, but I'm going to have to address that some other time. Mr. Topics Master.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. I promise I won't sell that information to John for less than $1 million. My next participant is going to be Joy, our lovely vote counter for the night. Joy, this is a very simple question. All you have to do is answer this question. Someday I.
Someday I will know what I will want to become when I become adult. That's what I have been wondering all my life. I mean, what do I want to become? And I have been a lot of things and tried a lot of different roles. But all the time I have felt that I actually should be doing something else. And I think this is a personality issue, because what I ended up being then most of my life was a project manager. As a project manager, you can define a lot of things and manipulate the directions where you want to go. If you are convincing, if you can convince somebody to pay for your ideas and directions. But still, while I was working with that, with lots of all kinds of processes and heading towards specific goals, I had the feeling that I should be working more with people. And that's what I have been doing then after I retired. But still I'm thinking that there must be some like third dimension or a third age or something more that I could be exploring. And that's one of the reasons I keep on traveling a lot to countries I don't know much about, just to see whether I can find some new perspective also on my own life and be useful in some new kind of way. Back to you, Mr. Tiger Topics Master.
Thank you for that in-depth answer to a very short question. Mr. Timer, Nick, this is an appropriate question for our timer. You may go back in history any time before 1900. What year are you going to return to, and what are you going to do?
The year is 1867. You remember, Jim? Ah, just kidding. 1867, we had in the UK, by the way, Britain at the time ruled the world. Well, we kind of still do, but hey. 1867, the Representation of People Act. And what that actually did was, it actually gave more ordinary men the right to vote. So at that time, there were only a few thousand men who were allowed to vote. And this particular Act of Parliament extended this and enfranchised many, many thousands more men. Well, that's the point, isn't it? What I would do is I would actually go back to 1867. At that time, the Prime Minister who pushed this through was William Gladstone. And if I was Gladstone, I would actually bring forward the even bigger, even more hated idea at that time of giving the vote to women. And why not? Because ultimately, that did come around. It took another 50 years or so, but it did come around, and we still are in a situation where women are actually working and living and fighting 50 years behind everybody else. In the UK, we don't have equal pay. We're supposed to, but we don't. In terms of the where the actual act appears in the landscape of British history, it is one of the greatest acts that have been passed. It's actually referred to as the Great Reform Act of 1867. It was that big, but it did set the ball rolling for everybody else and for things to come. And we must keep that momentum going and keep it going. In the online world, I don't think the computers can tell a difference between men and women. Do you? Back to you.
Thank you, sir. What a magnificent answer to a potentially dangerous question. Mr. Andy, I see that you like the Bay Area. Are you there, sir? Andy, are you there? Andy? We can't hear. Oh, your mic. You're muted.
I think he's been talking on the telephone to somebody.
Yeah, it looks like he's on a conference call.
Oh, okay. So let us go.
Hello.
Andy,
sorry.
are you? Oh, there he is.
I'm having people calling me from all over the place, and sorry about that.
That's okay. We're going to back up about 38 seconds.
All right.
Are they calling from the future?
We're calling from the future. And in a few seconds, I am going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Andy, what does the world look like 25 years from now in the year 2044?
That's a very interesting question. Thank you, Tiger, for that fascinating question. If people have been watching the news, you know that by 2044, the Earth will have suffered major disasters. Much of Florida, Louisiana, and other places like the Carolinas will be underwater. The air will be so difficult to breathe that most people will be walking around with Lindy walkers and respirators because you can't breathe the air. Water will have to come from desalination plants because you can't drink the stream water, which has been poisoned by lack of care and the destruction of the EPA over the last few years. I think that we also have issues because of AI. You have mass climate change that is producing massive changes in populations moving to the places that can feed them. And so you have a massive population shift from the central part of America, as well as the population shifts taking place from around the globe. You already heard of the island nation that had to be moved completely because it's underwater this year, and more of that will take place. From a technology standpoint, AI will help remove jobs from a lot of the population, so there'll be massive displacement of individuals. So 2045 could be a great year, but it could also be a very dark year. Thank you very much.
Well, that certainly was worth waiting for. Thank you, sir. Mr. Timer, do I have time for one more question? I see some nodding. Elaine, I saved the best for last. You are a space traveler. You have exited our universe. You are the first human being to ever have done so. What have you discovered?
Mr. Table Topics Master, well, our guest has exited, and and fellow Toastmasters, what I've discovered once I exited this universe, I landed up in the multiverse, which meant I am now at the state of mind and consciousness once I'm out of our universe to be able to place myself simultaneously in any number of places. In other words, I'm at a place of expanded consciousness, and I can reap from this place outside of our known universe. I can reap all the good things that are needed and instantaneously bring them back and gift them to my known universe. So I now have the wondrous capability to solve any problem that exists from the state of mind of what's called duality, polarity. And I feel somehow I must have been in the right place at the right time to be gifted with this great opportunity to bring back, let's say, the original state of being for any creature of consciousness on Earth, in our solar system, in the galaxies, in our universe. But it is the time of peace and prosperity and health and joyful play that we have all been hoping for. Back to you, Tiger.
Thank you, Elaine, for that enlightening answer. Hopefully you'll be back by 2045. I shall turn the meeting back over to our esteemed Toastmaster, Mr. John Quick.
Hey, thank you, Topics Master. Mr. Timer, can you please let us know who qualified, if there were any disqualifications today for voting?
Everybody qualified. If you have a look at the chat, Jim 214, Joy 143, myself 217 approximately, Andy 141, and finally Elaine 153. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you, Mr. Timer. Send your votes to Joy. It's time for the general evaluation segment where we get our speakers' feedback and hear all of our reports. To lead that segment today is Carol Brahinsky. Let's welcome her.
Well, thank you. Woohoo! Great to be on someday. Someday is today, not 2045 or 1870. Someday is today. Evaluating our first speaker, Annette Trim, is Deborah Carr. Please join me in welcoming Deborah. Yay! Woo!
Thank you. Well, excuse me, I've got stuff going here. Antoinette, it was nice to evaluate you tonight. The name of your speech was, I did not know I could motivate others. The objective, the main objective, was to have the member share some aspect of his or her motivating team members through completion of the project. That was for the, for this path. And what I found, I was just trying to find my scribbles here. If you fit that with knowing that, I remember one of your previous speeches where you talked about the team members and building this project that you were working on. Anyway, with this one, what I really enjoyed more than anything is when you spoke in a manner that was, it was timed very, very well. Sometimes before you would speak, and some of your words were hard to distinguish and everything else. I felt your timing was absolutely excellent, as your eye contact. The same with your smile is always excellent. And what I liked this time too was that you had your hands up further so we could see your gestures. You had those up, and they could even go a little bit more, but it was really great. You're also centered well in your screen. So that was nice, because there's been times that you were low, down further. And what I looked at tonight was just amazing how you've progressed through all of your different speeches. Just it keeps enhancing and getting better and better. So I really enjoyed that. What I liked was that you're really transparent about this discussion with this guy, how he would at times chew at you, and you would and you took ownership of saying, well, and sometimes I did too, and laid that out. I really liked also, along with transparency, that he just brought you in with surprise, and that without knowing that you were actually motivating, and behind the scenes, you were improving so much with him that you probably, he thought, holy crap, she's really come along well. And he, helped you move right into that position. The areas that I thought that maybe you could improve is where asked for specifics on motivating the team. I don't know if that was necessary in this speech, because previously you did that in one of your other speeches, as much as you obviously motivated him to move you forward into this other position. That was about the only thing, because what I said before is I really like this, the speed of your dialect and the way you spoke tonight. Overall, it was absolutely great, and I can't wait to hear more. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate the feedback to Antoinette. Our next evaluator is Lois Graham, and she's evaluating SL Boys Havani. Oh, say it again. Hold on. Boys have Hanover. Thank you. I'm trying. Thank you. Thank you, SL. Back to you, Lois.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. My fellow Toastmasters, Madam General Evaluator, and most especially, SL. Learning your communication style, understanding your communication style. There are so many things that SL does beautifully. First of all, look at her. Her frame is perfect. I don't know what happened to my camera. It got off kilter a little bit, but she is really just beautifully framed. And I don't know if that's really her house, because I've been looking on the internet for that screen. I haven't been able to find it yet, but it's always there, and she just looks so centered. And when she says that her communication style is supportive, you believe it, because she looks the part. There are some things you did exceptionally well. Number one, you have a very pretty lyrical voice that we can follow along and be brought in and feel your sincerity when you're talking about your daughter. And I loved your body language when your daughter was sad and you opened your hands. So you really had some very good body language in there. You asked the question, what is communication? This is where you listen, respond, and solve problems. You probably could pause a little bit more for emphasis, but it was okay because I enjoyed it anyway. The other things that you did really nicely was that you looked around the group periodically, but one thing that you might be doing is you might be reading, because every now and then there was a few full seconds and then you would come back. So you might want to actually put your notes on the computer screen itself, lift it up a little bit so we don't notice that you're actually reading, and make those more bullet point oriented. The only other suggestion I would have for you is I really liked hearing about your daughter. I would have liked to have heard how you work with your daughter in the different communication styles, because you did mention you need all of the styles. And in the first one, you were dealing really with the supportive style. But you're a mom, so we all know you had to have that assertive style going at some point. And you're a mom. Every now and then you're analyzing, trying to figure out, why is she saying that? So it would have been kind of fun to just hear you talk to your daughter using the 4 different styles. And I think that would have been a nice thread that would have gone through the entire speech that we could have followed along and understood a little bit better. But overall, it was a beautiful speech. I totally enjoyed it. And just listening to you brings a calmness to us. So I totally agree. You are a supportive communication speaker. Thank you, Madam General Evaluator.
Yay, thank you. Our next evaluator is Anne-Marie Diaz, and she's evaluating David Carr. Please join me in welcoming Anne-Marie. You're muted still. Oh, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. David, I found that your speech was very interesting, especially for somebody like me, seeing all the evolution of Toastmasters and also the things that can be being done better now and things that have been changing through the times as they were before and now, and that there's still room to go and to grow. I love that part. It was also very clear the difference that you put between coaching and mentoring. And I really like that, how you describe the part that the one is just to help the coaches, just help to go over a hurdle and it's temporarily, while the mentor is more a long-term project to get the person there where the person wants to go. I love that part of you. Also, how you were talking about all the strategies that they have in the different pathways. It was very helpful, actually, also for me to learn from you many things about the role of the mentor and also mentoring. And I think that as a protege, actually, all of you are our mentors. In real time, we pick up from everybody something. And I really want to thank everybody, and your speech was really very good and very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anne-Marie. Our next segment is to have our helper reports. Yay. Oh, wait a minute. Before that, let's pass the baton in silent chat to Joy, our vote counter, once we have our timers report to make sure that they're all within time. Make sure that you vote for our best evaluators. If you have not done so, make sure you vote for our best table topics. And if you have not done so, you are late in voting for our best speaker, but please do so. And Joy, good luck. It all might come all at once, but good luck. All right, now let's move on to our helper reports. I'm going to start with our counter. Please join me in welcoming counter Mike Walsh.
Hey, thanks everybody. I've been listening carefully. I've been trying not to get too mesmerized in everybody's speeches and all of that. Maybe I'll start off by doing some ahs and ums because we really did well. I did notice that the more conversational we get, the more we tend to start our sentences with ands and ums and buts and you knows and things like that. I did learn a lot from David Carr, though. I was about to say, you know, David, you say a lot of ands, but then you change it and you start something with a but. And that's a perfect example of using that type of language effectively. So it certainly wasn't distracting. I did notice a couple of, from John, I did notice a couple of you knows and a few so's that maybe stood out a little bit. But that's really what the counter is there for, is to point out the things that really stand out and distract from the communication rather than something that's simply added into a regular conversation and it sounds natural. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Mike. Woohoo! I didn't get called on tonight. I'm so thankful. Maybe that's why I called on him first. Okay. Our next helper tonight is our grammarian cop, Jim Barber. Please join me in welcoming Jim. Yay!
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Let me start with Mike. In his opening, when he just was describing his role, he used the phrase captivate me. And when he closed with his report just now, he used the word mesmerized. I think it's important to realize that whatever we're doing, whether we're giving a report, giving an opening, introducing ourselves, we're on stage and your grammar needs to be good at those times, if at all possible. Now let me focus though on our prepared speeches. All three of them, they did something very interesting. It's not their vocabulary that was so powerful as the way they used the simple words that they had. For example, Antoinette repeated the phrase, you never know who does something. You never know who that does this. You never know who does that. You never know is a simple phrase, but repeating it made it dramatic. And that was very, very good, Antoinette, very good. Syl did the same sort of thing. She described different cultures, different attitudes, different senses of humor. Again, repeating the simple phrase after each other made it dramatic. That was very good. She asked the question, do they do this? Do they do that? Again, repeating it gave it power. David Carr did something a little bit different. He used the phrases right after each other. He talked about academic distinction, and then a few words later he said, stupid CL credit. Now compare those two. Academic distinction is a very highfalutin phrase, very, very nice. Stupid CL credit is a very kind of low-class way of putting it. And so he was comparing not only what he was saying, but choosing the words that he was doing it. That was great. He also closed with, I love this, find them, listen to them, and cherish them. Power of three made for a powerful close. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jim. I was ready to have Nick start flashing at us, but it didn't happen. Darn. Somebody else, I'll have to go extending past their time. Our next helper, Elaine Nieberding. Please join me in welcoming our watcher tonight.
Hello, fellow Toastmasters. I enjoyed being your watcher this evening. I'd like to point out a couple things specifically. Syl, you get all my claps, all my kudos for just a multiplicity of great use of your frame, your color contrast. You kept things simple with your slides for your speech. The first one was particularly effective with the mother-daughter embrace and the black and white wording in the back. It was very effective. The second slide was not as effective, but the way you emote and connect with your audience just balanced everything out. So thank you for that. The second thing I'd like to talk about is contrast. I particularly like to mention Joy right now and Nick. Joy, you have a great balance of bright color and a colorful background. It looks great. Nick, your black background is the perfect balance for your timing graphics. And then lastly, I would just like to suggest to both Antoinette and Anne-Marie, before you come on in the evening to Toastmasters, go into Zoom, practice with your lighting so you make sure you don't either have blackout areas or whiteout areas. Both of you had a little bit of that happening, which can be a distraction. That's my watcher's report.
Thank you, Elaine. Our next helper is Trisha Smith. Please join me in welcoming our chat monitor. Yay, Trisha.
Hello, Toastmasters. I'll try to do this without reading from the chat box or my notes, because I was taking them as I went. I thought it was interesting because we started out with the jobs reports and some good links, which was helpful to me, hopefully other people as well. Some new words that were mentioned in the chat box. One of them was anachronism, and that was by John Quick. You can go to the chat box if you want to see what that is. I'm not sure how that tied in with the other topics of the chat box. Someday, that was identified by Lois. Thank you. We learned that Pathways has no level 2 projects. So that'll be something to keep in mind. And then other comments, everything was appropriate, everything was positive. Shopping, Christmas preparations, I guess we started that way. So everything was good, and we learned something. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much, Trisha. Right. Timer report. Nick, I did not skip over you, but I appreciate the summary in chat. So would you like to give a brief timers report?
Yes, if anybody wants to look at the specific times, I've actually given them out once already, and they are in the chat. Just like to say that everybody qualified for voting, except Anne-Marie for evaluation, I believe. And yeah, so to summarize, everybody did very well on the timing today. I just had to flash the ones. So well done. And yes, well done, everybody. Thank you. Back to you, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Joy, are you ready? Yes? All right. Come on up, Joy. Spread the good news.
Yeah. The best speech today was given by David Carr. And the best table topic speech by Andy. And the best evaluation by Lois. Congratulations to everybody.
Oh, I always love good news. Isn't that wonderful? Thank you. Now, time for my general evaluator report. Timer, I'm still hoping for guidance there. I think this meeting was fun. I really enjoyed myself. I didn't get to join until maybe 5 minutes before the night the official meeting started because of another webinar. But I came in and you guys were having a fun time, and I was able to enjoy just a few minutes of camaraderie before we got started. And then we continued the fun in the meeting. And that to me is making a well-run meeting. We always seem to manage quite nicely on our timing. We started on time, we're ending on time, I hope. I'll rely on our Madam President for that. And I also wanted to talk about the evaluators tonight. I really enjoyed them. We have evaluators that give a lot of feedback, both the strengths and the opportunities. They both need to be included in that evaluation for our speakers. And so Deborah, I thought, Deborah, there you are. Deborah, I really enjoyed your evaluation. You brought in so many strengths of what you saw. And I particularly liked that you pulled in information from previous speeches and talked about how Antoinette has improved and grown. It looks like she's just dropped off, but I loved that you did that. I thought that was very effective. And then with second evaluator, Lois, you always are, I'm so impressed with the way you pull things together to be able to give that strong support and still provide that helpful guidance to the person who needs that wisdom passed along to them, and you support them along that journey. So thank you for that leadership. Anne-Marie, thank you. What's that head shaking for? Oh, no, I want to say thank you. Why are you shaking your head? All right, thank you for stepping up to give that great evaluation. Now, we still have some tweaks to do. All right, one is your timing. Another was making sure that you give feedback for the growth of our speaker, David. So how can you help David continue his growth and learning? Because he's in Toastmasters because he wants that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night, pass it back to, I believe it's Lois, or do I go back to the Toastmaster? Thank you, Nick, by the way. Toastmaster? All right, back to the Toastmaster.
Right. Thank you, Madam General Evaluator and General Evaluation team. I had a lot of fun tonight. And I think I'll come back next week. Literally, I'll just return in time to the same meeting and relive it again next Monday. And there's one final thing I need your help with. I've been having this recurring dream for months with these odd symbols in them that keep coming to me. And maybe one day someone out there will figure out what this all means. But for now, I guess we'll just have to take it as an omen for the future. Madam President.
Thank you, John. I hope some of you took the time to read John's email when he sent out his agenda. I thought it was so clever, and I love the part where he said, if you wanted to do something unique, you can walk up to a statue, look at it, drop to your knees, and say, no! I am going to do that at one point. I just thought that was hysterical, and I could just imagine what people's reactions would be to that. So thank you for your quick wit, your dry humor. I enjoyed immensely. Coming up, we have, first of all, we did fabulous today. Thank you so much to everybody in all your roles. Is Amber still on the call? Let's see. No. Okay, Amber had to go. We have coming up on December 28th, another speechathon. Joy, I know you're going to be involved in it. I think, Nick, you are also. Are you both speaking or you're helping? Carol, you're speaking in the speechathon. Okay. So
I think I'm going to be Toastmaster.
You are going to be the Toastmaster. Okay. Are we still looking for speakers that have to have some of those longer speeches?
We have 3, I believe, possibly even a reserve.
I think we're full on time
Yeah.
at this time, unless somebody drops out.
Oh yeah, because Joy's speech is 30 minutes, so that definitely takes some time up. Okay, so we have that going. Next week, I will be the Toastmaster of the day. Beware, I will send out a theme. Gonna try and do something a little bit different, but we'll see where we come up with. Congratulations to all the winners today, all the evaluations. The speeches were phenomenal. Is there any other business that we need to bring up at this time? Okay, well then guess what? Our date is ending early, Deborah. We love the fact that we are your Monday night. I love the fact that we are your Monday night dates. I think this is just so cute. Thank you for sharing that with us.
My Monday family.
That's it. It's all about the family.
It's all about the family.
Since we are done, we are ending 4 minutes early. Thank you, everyone. I am going to go ahead and disconnect. Y'all have yourself a